fight's cancelled. They're looking at replacements. The three names, there were three heavyweights on the card that are fighting that people have suggested: Derek Chisora, Philip Hrgović and Dempsey McKean. Chisora's had some criticism because obviously the hard fights he's been in. Hrgović is undefeated, he's the IBF next contender. Dempsey McKean is still kind of relatively upcoming, but he's undefeated. Which one of them appeals to you?
Well, you know, if they're looking at Dillian Whyte for AJ, Hrgović is a bit too much of a risk, and people might think that Chisora's a foregone conclusion, so they're kind of between a rock and a hard place on that one. And you know, I think the British fans will be interested in Chisora against AJ because he's never boxed him, and I think a lot of people think that AJ is gun shy, and at least Chisora will come out for 4 or 5, 6 rounds and try and put it on him. There's always that aspect of him, you know, catching him, because that's the only way Chisora fights. Hrgović, if he's number 1 for Usyk, well, what's he going to make more money? He's going to make more money against AJ, or he's going to make more money against Usyk. You know, he'd probably make more money against AJ. But I suppose they could always use that excuse saying that Hrgović wanted more money, too much money. And, you know, that's an easy way to get rid of a risk. Oh, we'd love to do that fight, but he was demanding too much money. You know, what the fans want, if it's a pay-per-view fight, realistically, you know, Hrgović is unbeaten, he's a danger man, he's number 1 in the world with the IBF, as you said. That's an interesting, tasty fight. But with only a week to go until the fight, and AJ's been training for he's been training for Dillian Whyte, and Hrgović has been training for somebody else. It's not really a good idea, you know, for either fighter really, even though Hrgović is unbeaten, to kind of change your opponent last minute. It's never a good idea, because you've been training a certain way.
Looking at the styles, I think common sense suggests Derek Chisora's got a similar style to Dillian Whyte: come forward, aggressive, throws looping shots. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just whether it's the fans. Do the fans want to see it? Is it going to sell? Is it going to do pay-per-view? You know, that's the way you got to look at it. I think it probably will be an entertaining fight for a couple of rounds, and also you could use it to measure, you know, Tyson against Chisora. They could look at AJ out, you know, but he's a bit more shot-worn since then. So I think probably that Chisora's going to get the call, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's going to be the easiest one to make.
Do you think AJ deserves some respect for the fact that he's willing to fight somebody else as a replacement? Bearing in mind he's got Deontay Wilder fight, which they say is pretty much done for January in Saudi. So him fighting somebody last minute with the prospectus of Deontay Wilder a few months away?
Well, Dillian Whyte, I'd say, is a more live opponent than Chisora. The other thing about Dillian Whyte I was going to say is that, you know, coming back from adversity, he's obviously had these failed drug tests, but, you know, the way he got knocked out against the Russian and came back, you know, getting absolutely slept and then working his way back, you've got to admire him, because AJ has never been in that position. He was in a bad position against the Mexican Ruiz. He was in a tough fight there, and he was on his feet. He never really had the knockout cold shot that Dillian Whyte had. So for Dillian Whyte to actually overcome that takes a lot of mental strength. And that's why I think this fight between Dillian and AJ would have been an interesting fight, because, you know, Dillian's been in a bad situation in that fight, asleep, and he came back from it. And I think it would have probably been a harder fight for AJ, a lot harder fight than the first one. So I think boxing Chisora is actually a step down, and it's an easier fight for AJ, you know, an easier fight. And it doesn't really matter whether he boxes Dillian Whyte or boxes Chisora when Deontay is the next one along. It doesn't really matter. It just means I think AJ is going to have a lot more confidence fighting Chisora than he would against Dillian Whyte.